Hello, I'm going to be reviewing a couple of the books that I've read over the last month. We're in, what is it, September now. I think I read these books in August, but this is the September sort of roundup of what I've read. So let's get to them. The first book that I finished was The Ancient Mysteries, a source book of sacred texts, and that's by Marvin W. Is it Meyer? I'm not completely sure how to pronounce that, so if I'm getting it wrong, I apologise now. What this is, he's looked into a number of different ancient mystery traditions and given a little explanation of them and some actual, like excerpts from where they've got the information from. So I wanted to read this book. If you haven't noticed, I'm a little bit obsessed with the fundamental questions of life. Where do we come from? What is life about? What should we be doing with our time here? Where do we go after we die? Things like that really interest me and excite me. And I've looked into many areas of this, and this was another area to look into. When I got this book, I wasn't completely sure that it was what I thought it was going to be, and I thought, is it just going to be sort of giving me excerpts like an equivalent of, say, the Bible or something, and I don't really understand the symbolism of how to interpret it. But to be fair to Meyer, how we pronounce that, to be fair to him, I think he's done a pretty good job of trying to give the context of the excerpts and a little bit of background and description. So I felt that was done well. I think that the symbolism isn't often always known about. When I've looked into some of the things to do with religion, like Kabbalah, if you hear good Kabbalah people, like on Kabbalah Info, talking about the Old Testament, obviously because it's like Jewish, but you hear them talk about those stories and the symbolism, and there's a real difference between the literal stories and the symbolism of what's in those stories. And I don't think you really have that in a lot of the mysteries. You can try and guess what they are. So things like, obviously, corn is going to mean, life and maybe fertility and abundance, and it could also mean the material. So you can try, but it's good to have a better teacher to really explain all the symbolism, because I think these things are very, very symbolic. But it's been interesting to learn about, and he goes through sort of a lot. So a lot of the mysteries had a similar template of maybe cleansing techniques beforehand, and then they have a big ritual, which can include certain foods, chants, and like dramas. And really trying to portray a message rather than give a lesson. It's about an experience, and you should come out feeling that you've really gone through something. So, did it answer my questions? Well, no, because as he explains, those secrets have been really well kept, and they don't really know much of the real detail, the nitty-gritty about what went on. So it's a lot of trying to find other people talking about things in different places, and a lot of the references are from Christian converts. So they're people who were involved in the mystery traditions or went through them, and they've now converted to Christianity. So their opinion, so they don't feel the need to keep that secret anymore. But their opinion of them is often quite negative. They're putting them down and saying it's nothing, nothing to be, it's not a good thing. So it's very biased. Also, it's those have come right at the end of the real time of the mystery traditions. So things may have been different then anyway. I mean, if you look at sort of religions and things, they do evolve over time. Right. So some of the things he talks about are things like the Demeter mysteries and Dionysus mysteries, and it is really interesting. I'll go through some of them actually, because what he's done is he's gone through sort of one at a time of some of them. So you've got like, yeah, the grain mother and daughter. You've got the Dionysus mysteries, the Anatolian mysteries of sort of the great mother and her lover, the Egyptian mysteries of Isis and Osiris, the mysteries of Mithras, and the mysteries within Judaism and Christianity. And I think he's sectioned it out quite well, and he talks about the overlapping parts of different parts of the mysteries really well, because I think that is something that comes back again and again. That sort of nugget of gold that you're supposed to get out of them is probably the same in all of them. And that's something it's quite reassuring. So the things that I've learnt from looking into different religions and secret societies of today is again mirrored in those ancient mysteries, and it's really about trying to understand what we're doing here on Earth, learning that there's a lot more going on behind this facade, and that sort of trying to understand a bit more of that deeper world, so that maybe you can take this world a little less seriously and try to enjoy the experience a bit more. But also take responsibility for that and try and be a good person, because your actions do matter. But maybe not to have the stress and worry about the things which aren't really real that are going on. Yeah, so that's interesting. So the Demeter mysteries were really often a sort of feminine thing, and a celebration of the earth, and fertility and abundance and things like that. And also the cycles of life. The Dionysus mysteries were a bit strange, a bit scary. It's obviously no surprise to me that Dionysus came from the region of Lydia. But yeah, they seem to get a little bit crazy at times. I think that's supposed to have started out as a mystery for women, again, and talks very much about the life-giving force and that kind of life-enjoying force, because he's also supposed to represent wine and enjoyment and things like that, as well as sort of deep primal urges and things. But it got a little bit raucous at times. And some of the stories about that were pretty debauched and gross. So, yeah, that was quite unappealing. A lot of the aspects that were covered in all the mysteries are aspects of sort of rebirth, our connection to nature and our connection to our own nature, and connections to other worlds. So we talked about the rituals. So with the rituals, it's really important. So you would have these cleansing rituals, maybe fasting and certain washing and things like that. And I think that's really just to help you bring your body to feel that you're kind of starting again and refreshing. Also, if you've been fasting, that's very detoxifying and, can make you feel very sort of alert and things like that. Then they'd have special foods, and these foods might have sort of mind-altering effects as well, and wine and things like that. So that's going to put people in maybe a more suggestive state, maybe more connected to their spiritual self state as well, and maybe a more vulnerable state. Then there were things like chanting. Chanting can be really powerful. Sound can have a really powerful effect on the body, particularly if you're a little bit out of your normal senses. Okay? And then there was dramas either performed or that people participated in. And that's to really make the experience real, to really feel like people have actually gone through something. And I wonder as well if there's a lot of near-death experiences in there, because there's a number of them that talk about seeing the light and being reborn. And if you have a near-death experience, even if it's something that's been orchestrated, when you think about having it out of your normal mental state a little bit, the chanting, which is really powerful, and the drama of it. I know in secret societies as well, they can do things where people really think they're going to die. Really, if you genuinely believe you're going to die, it's an incredibly powerful experience, and your body will produce all sorts of hormones and things like that, and chemicals, and there will be a genuine feeling of absolute euphoria and rebirth afterwards. and maybe then seeing things more clearly. That's often what can come out of these experiences, is seeing that stuff that I'm worrying about is just not important, and actually there's other things, certain things. And I hate that, living a good life, being a good person, but it is really important for your whole being and your whole soul. So things like that. So one thing I was wondering when I was reading it is how many people were actually involved in the mysteries. Was it something that just a small layer of society did, or different? Like, he didn't really explain that, whether, you know, certain groups of people, like, oh god, how am I going to, like, maybe class-ish system or origin issue would affect who would choose different mysteries, and how many people were really participating in them and were really affected by them, or how many people were just sort of going through the motions, as can happen with religion. Right, so let's have a look at a quote from the book. This is Plutarch observes the similarities between death and initiation into mysteries. So this is a quote from him, Plutarch. At first there is wandering and wearisome roaming and fearful travelling through darkness with no end to be found. Then, just before the consummation, there is every sort of terror, shuddering and trembling and perspiring and being alarmed. But after this a marvellous light appears, and open places and meadows await, with voices and dances and the solemnities of sacred utterances and holy visions. In that place one walks about at will, now perfect and initiated and free, and wearing a crown. One celebrates religious rites and joins with pure and pious people. Such a person looks over the uninitiated and unpurified crowd of people living here, who are packed together and trample each other in deep mud and murk, but who hold on to their evil things on account of their fear of death, because they do not believe in the good things that are in the other world. Okay, so that to me sounds very much like people who have gone through near-death experiences, maybe, you know, and the sort of experience, and also the experience sometimes of being, I hate the word enlightened, but so I've been listening to Caroline Miss lately, and she was talking about how when you work this stuff out, it can be very lonely, actually, because you look down at other people, you look at other people and you think everyone's just worrying about this shit, and it's just, you know, causing problems in their lives that they don't sort out, and, you know, it's, yeah, it can be sort of difficult. And they also, and then this is Meyer himself talking about, you know, not everybody went into these things for a really mystical experience. Some people sought initiation because they were lonely, alienated, or bored, and they wished to become members of a close-knit social club. And I think you could you know, attach that to religions and secret societies today as well. There are some people who really want to go into it for a life-changing event, for a real guiding thing, and then there are other people who do it as an activity or a social thing, or because they want to, yeah, get into a close-knit group. So it's interesting. Right, what else is there? Yeah, I don't think there's much more to say. So bits of the book were boring. There were some sections of just lists of rules and prices that they paid for things, and I did nearly give up at one point because it did get a little bit boring. What else? So page 82. I think this is talking about the Greek mysteries of Dionysus, which did get pretty dark at times. So what is this quote? So I think this is when they were having an investigation into it, the Romans. The pleasures of drinking and feasting were added to the religious rites to attract a larger number of followers. When wine had inflamed their feelings, and night and the mingling of the sexes and of different ages had extinguished all power of moral judgment, all sorts of corruption began to be practised. Since each person had ready to hand the chance of gratifying the particular desire to which he was naturally inclined, the corruption was not confined confined to one kind of evil, the promiscuous violation of free men and of women, the cult was also a source of supply of false witnesses, forged documents and wills, and perjured evidence, dealing also in poisons and in wholesale murders among the devotees, and sometimes ensuring that not even the bodies were found for burial. And that's pretty bad. So I think this one is supposed to have started off as just women, and they'd have these rituals, and I think they were supposed to explore things and not hold back. And I think there was a thing that you weren't supposed to say no to anything because it was about experiences. But it was supposed to be in a safe, enclosed atmosphere, not to be, you know, spoken about ever again as well. And then men were brought into this situation and a lot of wine, and it quickly became something of, well, abuse, really. And they were looking for younger and younger people. And yes, people were murdered as well, if that maybe as part of the rituals, or if they didn't like things, they didn't want to go along with things. So you can imagine for yourself how dark that can get. Pretty bad. Right, where are we now? Right. Oh, the other things that there was also self-castration in a few of them. I don't really get the appeal of that. That seemed to be in quite a few of them, is self-castration and showering in animal blood and things like that. The other thing is, there's always this talk about snakes. And if anybody out there has some real information about the symbolism of snakes, I would really like to know it. Because when you start looking around, snakes are fucking everywhere, right? They're even like, you know, health symbols and stuff like that. And, you know, important families, important historical things. You look around at the architecture and the art, there's snakes everywhere. And there's snakes in the ancient mythical stories and, you know, stories about the gods and all this stuff. There's always snakes, or they took on a form of a snake, or they had snakes helping them. All these things. And I want to know if somebody knows, because snakes are fucking horrible. And I know some people like snakes. Yeah, I've had a snake and I fucking hated it. And I used to dream about it. And the moment we got rid of it, all them dreams went. And it was not like a nice feeling. And it wasn't a horrible snake. It was a nice snake. But there is something about snakes, and I don't know the real symbolism of them. I don't know, and I've looked and I don't know. So if anybody really knows what they represent, obviously you've got Adam and Eve and the snake there. It's kind of clear to me what snakes mean. So why are they everywhere in stories about people who are supposed to be heroes or rich families? Is it that they really think they're the snake that is manipulating and taking things? I don't know. What health things, you know? I would be definitely interested to learn more about the real symbolism of snakes, because they're in everything you look into. There's always an important place given to snakes, and to me, snakes are horrible. So yeah, I'd love to know more. Talk about the Egyptian mysteries. Now, when I've read other things, I think the Egyptian mysteries were really held up and you know, lauded as the real good ones. And I think that they definitely focused on the near-death experiences, creating the whole environment for people to maybe even go to that. I mean, there's things that you can, you know, obviously it can lead to death quite easily, but there are things that people can do to kind of pass out bits or get very close to death. I think there might have been some of that. Where are we? 162. Let's just have a little look at that. Okay, so this is from the Osiris Mysteries. I think this is Plutarch talking again. Could be wrong, though. One of the first acts related of Osiris in his reign was to deliver the Egyptians from their destitute and brutish manner of living. This he did by showing them the fruits of cultivation, by giving them laws, and by teaching them to honour the gods. And this really interests me because obviously Egyptian religion is quite old, and there are older ones, but they're all based, you know, it's very similar. And there is this idea of somebody coming down and leading the savage people into civilization. And you hear it again and again and again. And yeah, and I think, what is it? Is it like an alien thing coming to Earth and finding the people who were I'm not saying that civilization is a good thing, but it's obviously how we've got here, how we're communicating, how we've got these books. There are always these stories about someone, and also you look at the Greek knowledge, wisdom, philosophy. I mean, it's like, it's so good. Where did that all come from? You know, that it's always based on something before that was very similar, really, in a lot of ways, until you get back to the oldest stories of someone coming along and telling them all this stuff, really. So that's really interesting to think about. What else? Last quote. Which one is this from? This is when he's gone on to the mysteries within Judaism and Christianity. So this is the writer himself talking. I'm not going to say his name again. During the time of the Roman Empire, several Jewish religious traditions, and especially early Christianity, showed remarkable similarities to the mystery religions. Like the Greco-Roman mysteries, Judaism and Christianity were in large part religions of choice, and Jewish and Christian initiates, like many of their counterparts in the mysteries, underwent purifications, fasts, baptism, and lustrations, and other ceremonial rites, such as circumcision and anointing the forehead with oil, in order to be admitted into the community. From the time of Paul, Christian baptism commonly was understood as a death experience, and the emergence from the water was taken as the beginning of new life. And he talks in about the similarities between parts of Christianity and the ancient mysteries. And I know other people have looked at the similarities are incredible. But I think the Christian one was supposed to be less, brutal and things like that often, as some of the other ones could get. So that was the end of that book. I'm really glad I read this book. I'm really glad I got through it, because I very, very nearly gave up on it when I was about 20% of the way through, because there was some really boring bits. But actually, it was good. It made me think a lot, and it's good to try and actually read those actual texts. I still think there's a lot of the symbolism that I don't know and I don't understand, and I didn't feel that was necessarily given in the book. Right, that's that. Done. Next book that I read was this one, The Anarchist Revelation by Paul Cudenec. Okay, so this is another sort of thing on this journey of trying to understand why we're here, what's going on, how should we be living while we're here. So I think if you look at the sort of social structures that we have and things, it doesn't take a rocket science to realise how not and just unfair in a lot of ways things are in our society, and not just our society. I'm not just a downer on things here. A lot of them around the world, you have this tiny group of people at the top making loads of money, skimming everything off of everybody else, and a large group of people who are often just decent people, whichever culture they live in, and they just want to get on with their own lives. And I do often think that if we just got rid of government, I think people would sort things out for themselves. I really do. I think things would get done. People say, we'd clean the toilets. Would we still be able to watch EastEnders? Yes, absolutely, because people would do these things because they want to do them. And I think sometimes, if you look at, I'm a full-time mum, and I don't do all the things that I do because I'm getting paid for it. I do it because it's important for me to do it. And actually getting paid for something often makes people, because I'm actually against money as well, not just government. The whole money system should just go, just have no money. People would do things because they wanted to do them, and they would. When people do things for money, you get work mode, and work mode's dangerous. You see people behaving in work mode all the time, and it is a very immoral way to behave. A lot of people, when they're in work mode, they leave their moral compass on the shelf and they do what they're told to do for their job. And it's a very, very dangerous thing, and I think it's caused a lot of problems in the world. And I'm actually reading Gulag Archipelago too, and I mean, what a perfect example of what happens when you take away all the moral influences in a society, and you just have structure and rules and what they thought was, you know, kind of being scientific and rational and sensible all the time. And it's the most brutal, disgusting abomination that should never be repeated ever again. Anyway, it's not quite that bad here. But I mean, just look at government and government finance and the way that money is skimmed off. It's absolutely disgusting. And it always amazes me because things get exposed, corruptions get exposed, and everyone's, oh, it's terrible what they did, and they took that in backhanders and changed the rule, bent the rules, didn't follow the rules, rah, 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 whatever. Or they're pushing more taxes on us and spending it on absolute crap that we don't want or need. It happens again and again and again. And I just think, when do people think it's just going to stop? It's just going to keep happening. It's how the system works. So yeah, I was interested in this book to find out a little bit more about what anarchy is actually like. I kind of know a little bit. My mum had gave me some sort of anarchist, you know, influences and things. Although I would say that the people that some of the people that she likes, where the fuck have they been over the last 2.5 years? So that's the thing, isn't it? People are corruptible. Another problem with money. Anyway, in this anarchist revelation, this isn't just about the kind of action and ripping down of the state. It's also about the spiritual side of anarchists. So it's a mixture of hardcore anarchism and spirituality, and talking about the spiritual roots of anarchist views. And you know, I do get that, because I think that's what you come down to. If you really look into religions, mystery, secret societies, actually they all come down to a thing of being a decent person, being a good person, being fair. And actually, if you look at the way that the vast majority of societies are formed, that isn't how they're formed. And the governing group at the top are the worst. So let's have a couple of quotes from this book. We're starting right at page 1. Okay. It is almost impossible to lead a truly meaningful life in the modern world. However hard we try to distract ourselves, we cannot shake off a profound and uneasy sense of dislocation, emptiness, and loss. Is this all there is? Is this who I really am? How can I feel more deeply? How can I feel more real? How can I feel more alive? We thrash about all over the place looking for reasons and solutions, but all too often follow false trails, discover partial causes and ways of thinking that offer merely temporary respite or, even worse, time-wasting distraction from the core problem. That's a really good quote. And I think a lot of people can relate to that and feel that and understand that. Okay. He talks about a lot of things in our society and the way that it controls and manipulates people using fear, particularly things like TV or all sorts of screens, and that people are sort of dumbed down and encouraged to bring out kind of the worst of themselves in many ways. Right. At the heart of the modern sickness is the loss of a true sense of identity. We don't know who we are, and we don't know who we're meant to be or what we're meant to be doing with our brief lives. We can't touch or even see our own sense of meaning because it is hidden behind the walls of a prison that has been built, that we ourselves have collectively built around us. Needless to say, this loss is also reflected in our culture, or unculture, as Landor has it, with no notion of any meaning, no connection to the depths of our being. Our arts are too often focused on empty form, imitation, or ugly caricature. And, I think there's a lot of truth in that. And I don't think that's what a lot of people really want. Maybe some people don't care, but I think a lot of people do care. It was one of the things I found really depressing when I read Caesar and Christ or something by Durant, I think his name was, last year, which was a really brilliant history book. It was really depressing to me how interested these people were in their lives and in living meaningful lives. and what is the point of life? What we're asking all these fundamental questions and really giving a shit about it and really trying to work on themselves and think about the best ways to be. It's quite depressing when you hear about people really into that and then you look around you. But I think people do care, really. Right. Let's carry on. So I'm going to miss a bit out. Okay, right, I'll do this quote. Meanwhile, of course, millions of people, many of them children, are forced to live in poverty and slavery in order to create the profits that fuel the capitalist system. Countless lives are lost and ruined by wars designed to feather the nests of the same financial vultures, both by securing resources for them to plunder and by providing markets for the murder machines they sell to the corrupt protection racket tax-collecting mafia we term governments. Okay, so although I'd kind of agree with that, it's pretty heavy, and there was a lot of that through the book. There was a lot of it, so it was like just quite heavy. And at times I found the book very inspiring, but at times I also found it a bit gloomy. And I also, for me, there were too many quotes in the book. There was a lot of quotes. Right, where are we? I'll do one from him. It's increasingly taken for granted that thought only has relevance if it is linked to material gain. Education is being redefined by capitalism as training for a paid job. Learning for the sake of learning is pushed aside to be replaced by the anti-values of entrepreneurship. Oxymoronic phrases such as the business community are deployed to create the impression of social benefit and even superior high-minded intent behind the frantic buying and selling of things and the accelerating conversion of the living planet into dead products of no lasting value, and indeed of negative impact. The term anti-business is laughably wielded as an insult rather than a term of admiration, and those who see through the deceit and falsity of it all and yearn for a reconnection to authenticity are urged to live in the real world. And that's a great quote, because that's what I've said before about trying to actually envision the world we want rather than accepting the world that we are told has to be this way. Because it doesn't have to be this way, and often the people saying that it does have to be this way are the people who profit from it. Okay, and profit they do. Right, let's carry on. Also to say, I didn't agree with all the theories in the book, but it's interesting to look into them. And he's looking at the spiritual side as well, maybe from different angles to ones that I've looked at. But yeah, a lot of it comes back to the same sorts of things of living a decent life, understanding who you are, and taking personal responsibility as well. Okay, I liked as well that he talks a lot about people feeling that there's nothing they can do, and I really hate that. Nothing we can do. There's always something that you can do, and even if you don't always succeed, the act of rebelling against something and and not agreeing to things is really important and valuable. Okay, I also like this little quote: protest is only regarded as legitimate when it is disempowering and symbolic, not of feisty dissatisfaction, but of cowed obedience. And I really agree with that. I mean, I've been on a few protests, and they can be inspiring and things, but you're so channeled to where you go, and it's not reported. Even when however many people are there, it's barely reported. And actually, that's sort of made me think about some of the Extinction Rebellion protests that have been going on recently, because of course they get incredible coverage. And the bits that I see of them, there's only about 8 people there. And, you just think, is this just completely just being shown because this is the message that wants to be pushed? It certainly appears like that, because I've been on protests where there are thousands and thousands of people, and there might be one line of it on MSM, and really nothing. And then Extinction Rebellion do something, which and that's the other thing as well. If you're on a proper protest, it's so controlled. It's so controlled where you can go, what you can do. You're not allowed to, be a disturbance, which is ridiculous. but yet these Extinction Rebellion ones, all sorts of things, it just seems very contrived and just not real and whatever to me. It made me think of that. So as the book went on, I did feel a little bit disillusioned at times because it could feel quite negative. It didn't feel like it was always giving me sort of answers or real, things much that I could work with. I felt sort of all fired up with no direction. So that was a little bit of a problem with the book. Although I did enjoy it, it's just, it could be a bit heavy at times. Right, let's go to this quote. So then he starts talking about he talks a lot about the spiritual side of things as well. And as I say, it was interesting. It wasn't necessarily my direction to come at things from, but it was interesting. While it must be stressed again that anarchism is not per se an esoteric movement, but a revolutionary political one, its modes of thinking are highly compatible with primal spirituality and very much look like the lower slopes of those metaphysical mountains. Okay, and he talks about how it's important to understand the spiritual side of this movement, and where that comes from. And I'd agree with that. Right, last quote. The screaming fury of the angry young rebel never stops echoing in the back of our heads, but we try to find a way to carry on living without either burying it, betraying it, or fully succumbing to it. And we find the true poetry of the anarchist in the daily courage of being ourselves in spite of everything. For an artist or an anarchist, being free as an individual is absolutely non-negotiable, the foundation of everything that we do. And yet, at the same time, there is the awareness we are serving some greater purpose. And I think that's just an excellent quote. And, talking about being yourself in spite of everything, you don't need to comply and submit. And even if, it feels like everything's happening around you, just being yourself, being honest, being truthful to yourself is really, really important. And then obviously the point about freedom being non-negotiable. I think so many people can relate to that. And that's another thing that you sort of told about living in the real world. And people talk about rights, which is completely different to freedom. Freedom is what it is. And yes, it should be the absolute goal. That should definitely be the goal. Overall, although there were parts when I found this book a bit heavy and a bit sort of went on about negatives a bit at times, overall it is an inspiring call to action. I definitely enjoyed this book and would recommend it. Okay, so they're the two books that I have read over the last month. I'm still reading Gulag 2 at the moment. I'm just coming up to halfway through, and that's going very well. But that's it. I think we're done. Right, I'll see you next month. Thank you.